What's up, guys? Welcome to Daily Dose of Reddit. This is your host, Zach, and today's subreddit is r/ProRevenge. Alright, this story is called Roommates Don't Respect My Boundaries. I Get Them Evicted in Less Than a Day. I don't know if this is pro, but it's certainly more than petty. Also, I apologize for any formatting. I'm on mobile and it's my first time posting any sort of longer story. Also, sorry for the long post, background is pretty important. My freshman year of college, I went through a long process with my school to be able to live off campus as a freshman. Normally, this is not allowed, but they made an exception due to circumstances. I moved in on lease takeover as a girl to an all-boy apartment. It was a 4-bedroom apartment that individually leased each room, but 2 rooms shared 1 bath and all shared a kitchen, living room, and laundry room. This place was gross when I moved in, but I cleaned it up and got it livable enough. I grew up with brothers and had no problem with dudes as long as they were decently respectful. Plus, I had the kitchen to myself. I'm also an engineering student and asked them if they had their friends over to let me know beforehand or keep the music below bed rattling. Turns out, this exact apartment was known as the party apartment, and I would soon find out why. I was working 8 to 12-hour shifts in retail and then going to school full-time. I come home at 11 p.m. exhausted to blasting music and so many people they are streaming out the front door. I was pissed! Luckily, each room locks with a deadbolt, and I remembered to lock mine before I left for work. There were easily 50 people there. As a 20-year-old who just wanted to sleep, I did the only rational thing I could do. I packed an overnight bag, locked my room, and called a friend with an SOS and slept there. I find out later that one of my roommates was dealing. Only 3 people were of legal drinking age, and 1 girl was 14? The girlfriend of one of my roommates was still in high school and invited all of her friends, who invited more people. The cops busted the party, but luckily didn't card anyone, so no one was arrested. Now, I felt like I could reasonably deal with this. Then they started to use my things in the kitchen, steal my food, and the last straw was when they dented my kitchen knives that I had just purchased. Brand new knives that now had nicks in the blade like they sword fought with them. Mind you, I communicated all of my grievances that weren't super minor, like using my laundry soap, with them and asked that my boundaries be respected. Their guests would throw up and poop in the toilet. They would try to enter my room to use my bed while I was sleeping. The girlfriend of one even ended up coming into my room to stare at me. I woke up when I forgot to lock my door to tell me 4 people were coming over. My food and my items were still being taken and damaged, and I grew tired of it all. I attempted to befriend the various roommates in an effort to get them to be more courteous, but the information I got was even better. Remember how I was a lease takeover? Yeah, our apartment not only required the necessary paperwork, they also required a lease takeover fee. I find out that my roommates are friends of the people on the lease. Their friends upgraded to a different apartment complex and didn't want to pay that fee. My roommates hadn't paid the takeover fee or signed any paperwork putting them on the lease, so the original leaseholder wasn't living there. I keep this information for later. A few weeks pass and the parties are smaller but still happening. Then one day, I am discussing painting my room due to the marks on the walls from the previous tenants. Our apartment allowed you to paint if it was 1, approved first, or 2, you painted it back before move out. The maintenance guys were super sweet and let me pick a custom color for my room, a pretty light sky blue. Bought it for me and helped me paint my room. My roommates find out I painted and ask about it, not knowing what would happen later. They didn't paint their room, they spray painted it. Not with any vulgar or even gang symbols, but spray painted it. The parties continued, but now they let their guests sign the walls in various Sharpies. This was the moment I realized was the time. I ended up taking pictures of the room on Snapchat and saved them to my camera roll. I knew that my apartment complex wouldn't do anything about the parties and could even blame me for the underage kids. Plus, the items I stored in the common areas were fair game according to legal terms about a shared space. I first speak with the building manager about the parties. I was right, there isn't anything I can do but call the cops. I can complain all I want about the condition of the house my roommates cause and the theft and damage of my belongings, and they won't do anything. They didn't even seem bothered when I spoke to them about 2 out of 4 of us living there not being on the lease. The other one that was on my side was chill, and I didn't have a problem with. As long as rent was paid on time, it seemed they weren't going to do anything. After all this, I pull out my camera roll and tell this nice lady to scroll as long as she wants, as I took about 15 pictures on just the one room. She gets mad and starts babbling on and on about gang graffiti, and she won't have it. I knew there were no gang symbols whatsoever on the walls, just dumb kids, but it didn't look good. I didn't correct her and reminded her that the rooms in question were the ones where they weren't even legal tenants there. I locked as much as I could remember to grab my things from the kitchen in my bedroom beforehand and was headed straight to work. So I didn't even get to see the devastation as 2 office workers evict them in hours. They weren't the legal tenants and had clearly stayed over the 7-day guest limit. They had to pack up as much as they could and were out by the time I got home from my shift 10 hours later. I got a lot of hateful and threatening messages from the girlfriend of one of them. I don't remember the exact words as this was a few years ago, 2016, and I didn't save it for more than a year. I did save them once she started threatening me with stalking and physical harm. I stayed polite and neutral in my responses in case I would need to take them to court. They did get one small revenge in that I remembered to lock up my pots, but in my hurry, I forgot the lids. They stole my lids to all cookware, even my crock pot. They also took all my food they can grab and put it in the now topless crock pot with all of my spices too, and left it on. I'm not sure what liquid was used, and I don't ever want to know. But I ended up paying the rent of a 1-bedroom for 4 bedrooms when the last roommate's lease ended a few months later. The rooms were leased individually. Also, the now former roommate's friends that were on the lease had to come in, clean, and repaint the walls white. Do you know what happens when you put water-based white paint over red and black colored permanent marker? He eventually hired a guy to make it look right. I heard it took 9+ layers in some areas, and others were entirely speckled. That's not right, but it was a special paint that wouldn't let the ink from the marker bleed through, and was super thick. Hey. I felt bad for the original leaseholders as they were now stuck with the damages, had to repaint, and still had to pay rent on this apartment. I had met with and was cool with them, even tried helping one guy paint a bunch, and told him I had no beef with him. I apologized the way things worked out and he wasn't happy with me, but also didn't blame me. I reasoned it with they knew they were breaking the terms of their lease and exactly who their friends were when they didn't transfer the lease. If they hadn't repainted the room the way they did, the complex manager wouldn't have done anything. Okay, well, the way she handled that was pretty cool. Also, I applaud her patience with the whole thing, because she had to live with that for at least a month or something? That's ridiculous. Good job, OP. Alright, this story's called HVAC Company Fired Me Without Cause. The EPA helped me get revenge. Not sure if this counts as pro. You be the judge. I was hired as an HVAC technician at a local company around 5 years ago. On the day of the interview, I was asked if I had my driver's license, and I responded that I did not. I was asked if I could get it, and I told them that I could once I had saved up the money to pay off a child support obligation. Due to an auto accident, I was unable to work for nearly 2 years, and the child support just piled up. In my state, they can and did revoke my driver's license, but not my state refrigerant license. I was hired anyway and paired with another technician who drove one of the company trucks, and we made a rather good team. However, I began to notice some seriously concerning behavior. But before I get into that, let me explain something. In order to work as an HVAC technician that can transport and handle refrigerants, one must have a refrigerant license. To get this license in my state, I had to attend a community college for 6 months, complete all of the required classes, and then take an exam that is administered by the State Refrigeration Board. Much of this exam requires a thorough knowledge of Environmental Protection Agency guidelines, requirements, and, most importantly, laws. It is illegal to improperly dispose of refrigerant. It must be recovered, reclaimed, and/or recycled. This was something that was drilled into our heads. The EPA sternly frowns upon the improper releasing of refrigerants into the atmosphere. Moving on. The company that hired me was a smaller local type. One office, one warehouse, less than a dozen trucks, and no more than 20 employees. Their reputation was stellar, and they had numerous long-standing contracts with expensive private community home construction companies. Despite their reputation, the technicians were the worst type, lazy and thoughtless. I noticed a lot of little things that were just straight up unethical. Shaking the dust off an air handler filter, but claiming it was replaced. Charging people money for a pound or two of refrigerant that was never added. Lots of little petty things that cost little individually, but add up quickly. But there was one thing that was commonly done that especially irritated the crap out of me: venting refrigerant into the air. I mentioned it a few times and was brushed off. I desperately needed this job, so I didn't want to jeopardize it. But I did begin to take notes, and on 9 separate occasions, I recorded video on my phone. Wasn't hard to do either. I only did this to protect myself in case I was asked about it. But later on, those notes and those videos came in handy. So just shy of a year, I was fired because I had not gotten my driver's license. They had wanted me to go out in a truck on my own, which would have made them, and myself as well, more money. The thing is, other than the day I was hired, I was never asked again about my driver's license. Nobody brought it up. I had been slowly paying my debt off, but had not yet saved up the money to pay all of the fees necessary to get my driver's license back. I tried to file for unemployment and was denied, based on the grounds that the employer said that I failed to acquire a license that was necessary for performing my duties. Here's the good part. The EPA will pay up to $10,000 for evidence of every instance of improperly venting refrigerant into the atmosphere. If you go to your local Walmart and pick up a can of refrigerant for your car's AC, you can actually read the EPA statement on the label. It warns you that you can be punished with fines, imprisonment, or both. You can learn more here. Link. This applies to everyone, even HVAC companies. I made a few phone calls and representatives from my state's Board of Refrigeration came for a visit. I presented my notes, gave them copies of the videos, and ultimately, the company that hired me and then fired me was shut down. The list of infractions discovered by the EPA after I blew the whistle was rather long. The bonus? I collected a sizable sum from the EPA for my evidence. Yes, I now have my driver's license and am now employed by a respectable HVAC company. Okay, good thing you did eventually end up reporting them because, well, pollution's bad, guys. Alright, this story's called My School Denied Me, So I Sued Them. A little about me. I have a service dog for my PTSD, and at the time, I was in 6th grade. At the time, I had just gotten my service dog and was going to school. When I contacted the school to inform them that I was bringing my service dog in, they flat out refused to let my service dog in the school, which, where I live, it is illegal to deny a service animal access to somewhere without a good reason. So for months after that, I continued in that school without my service dog, which was very hard because he would also help me to stop inflicting self-harm. So after the denial, I was constantly bullied because of it, not just by the students, but by the teachers as well. And after one day, after months of this, I snapped from one teacher's comment who said, "I will amount to nothing in life." After that day, I told my parents what was going on, along with most of my class, them saying what the teachers and other students had said behind my back because I needed a service dog. They were furious, and they ended up contacting the Human Rights Tribunal, who took the case, and they sued the school for discrimination. We ended up winning the lawsuit, and now the school is in threat of closing down. I later found out that the teacher that was bullying me the most got fired. In other words, don't mess with a disabled kid. Okay, that school deserves to burn down. I'm very glad it worked out in the end, but that is just horrible. To make someone feel bad about something like that is just, well, it's stupid. Alright guys, last up, I know I haven't done this in a while, but it's because it's a pain in the ass to find a wholesome story. It's not like you can just search wholesome story and a whole bunch of wholesome stories of good quality show up. No, you gotta scroll through a whole bunch of crap. Anyway, today we have another wholesome story called, another wholesome story from Japan. This just happened yesterday. I needed to print some documents for a job interview, so I stopped by a Lawson convenience store along the way. When I got to the copy machine, I saw a senior man standing in front of it and looking pretty lost. The following exchange happened in Japanese. "May I use the machine?"
Go ahead.
Realizing how lost he was, "Do you need a copy?"
Yes.
"What do you need to copy?" The man passed me his bank book. I put it inside the copier, taking care not to look at his personal information. I walked him through the steps to make a copy, and I passed him the copied sheet while again taking care not to look at his personal information.
Thank you very much.
The man leaves as I pull out my own documents to get to business. Then I realized that the transaction wasn't over and I had forgotten to give the man his receipt. I felt a twinge of guilt, but I figured that over a 10 yen copy, he should be fine. This was a situation where I wasn't obligated to help a customer, but I thought it was the right thing to do. In addition to this, I would have been waiting much longer if I went to flag down a staff member who already had lines of customers at the registers. It was just faster to help him out and get him on his way. "Ha, you tried to disguise this story as a wholesome story where you're a good person, but look at you, you're nothing but a thief." You know what that man could have done with that 10 yen? Not very much. I'm joking, obviously. Good on you for helping someone out when you knew you could. You're a good person. Good job. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that bell to never miss an episode.